So we're going to call this pre-study guide notes. There's a couple of terms I need to define for you before I give you the study guide. And back to these isosceles triangles. We talked about them yesterday or the other day. We said that an isosceles triangle had two congruent sides. In this triangle ABC, the two congruent sides, they form angle A. This angle in an isosceles triangle is called the vertex angle. The other two angles in an isosceles triangle are called base angles. In an isosceles triangle, the two sides that are congruent to each other are called legs. Alright, the two congruent sides are called legs. This third side is called the base. And now, in a triangle that has two congruent sides, the angles that are opposite those sides, angle B and angle C, they are congruent. You've got quite a few questions in this study guide where they're referring to the triangle that you're going to be working on in words, and you're going to have to draw the triangle and label some sides. So make sure you understand the congruent sides are called legs. The angle formed by the congruent sides is called the vertex angle. The other two angles in an isosceles triangle are called base angles. The congruent sides are called legs. The third side is called the base. There's a question in the study guide that refers to an A-frame house. In an A-frame house, two congruent sides extend from the ground to form a 34-degree angle at the peak. So look, if this is the ground, and you're dealing with an A-frame house that extends from the ground, that's what the A-frame house would look like. These would be the congruent sides. This angle, this would be the peak. Now, there's a problem in your assignment today that looks like this, where you're given an isosceles triangle, you're given this angle, and you're given an exterior angle. You're asked to solve for the variable. This is an exterior angle problem. Yesterday we said that an exterior angle is equal to the sum of its remote interior angles. So the measure of angle A plus the measure of angle B is going to equal the 10M here. Now there's some things missing in this problem. Number one is that if these two sides are the same, this is an isosceles triangle, then these two angles are the same. These base angles are congruent. Alright? Now, if the 10M equals angle B plus angle A, and angle A is represented by 5M minus 10, you need an expression for angle B in order to solve for M. So you got to draw back on what you learned about starting off with a linear pair. If you had a linear pair of angles, and this angle on the right was 120 degrees, what would the angle on the left be equal to? It would be equal to 60 because these two angles sum 180, right? Now, another way of saying that this angle on the left would be 60 would be saying that the angle on the left equals 180 minus 120. Agreed? This angle on the left of a linear pair is going to be equal to 180 minus whatever the angle on the right is. So you have to apply that concept to this problem. Because if you know angle ACB down here, then you also know angle B. So using this same concept, we can say that this angle is equal to 180 minus 10M. And if this base angle on the right is 180 minus 10M, then the base angle on the left is also 180 minus 10M. So now do you see where you got to go to solve for M? This exterior angle, the 10M, is going to be equal to the sum of the 180 minus 10M and the 5M minus 10. Okay? So you had to create an expression for an angle measure. And then you had to move it to a congruent angle location in order to write your equation to solve for the variable. So you had to do some things in that problem that you haven't had to do yet this year. Alright, and one other reminder before I give you this study guide. If you're given this picture in a different application, and this angle is 4x plus 5, and this exterior angle is 12x, said earlier that in an isosceles triangle, if the two legs are congruent, then the angles opposite those legs are also congruent. So if one base angle is 4x plus 5, what's the other base angle? And what did these two angles have to add up to? 180, right? Because they got to sum 180 because they're a linear pair. Alright? So hopefully that'll help you get through the study guide a little quicker today. Anybody have any questions on anything we just talked about?